Well, I want to thank everybody for joining. As Kate mentioned, I'm Jimmy Campisi, and I'm a security specialist here at Cisco. So I focus on everything security around Cisco. And I do want to spend the next half hour or so talking about bring your own device, which has kind of taken the industry by storm with all of the smartphones and tablets that are entering the network. And so I want to, first of all, just go over a couple of industry trends, but then spend most of the time sharing with you guys a couple of best practices that you can do today that will help you secure smartphones and tablets that could be possibly coming in your network. I'm going to start with just, again, just talking about a couple of trends just to start out the conversation, just to have a framework or an overview for bring your own device. Really what we need to do, what my customers need to do, is we talk to customers every day about securing the BYOD, the devices, the endpoints that are out there, is we have to balance productivity with security. And everyone wants to connect from any device, anywhere, from any time. And that's a good thing for us as companies as well. We want our employees to be productive. We want guests, we want contractors to be productive no matter where they are. When they wake up and they're having their coffee at Starbucks, we want them to be able to connect to applications so that they can increase productivity, and then on to the airport kiosk if they're traveling, or to a virtual or home office environment, all the way to their physical office and everywhere in between. And so there's a lot of applications out there that will help enhance productivity, and there's a lot of job satisfaction as well that is a result of allowing folks to connect from any device and from anywhere, etc. And so I think we all realize the trends and the productivity enhancements that are available to our employees, our guests, or contractors. On the other hand, though, there's security threats and vulnerabilities. And the web is now the #1 attack vector. So the bad guys, they will always follow where we're going, and they know that we spend a lot of time on social networking environments, sites such as LinkedIn, YouTube, etc., social networking personal sites, but also business applications like WebEx, which we're using right now, Salesforce.com, etc. So the web is the #1 attack vector. The bad guys are looking to steal data, information, and sell it online for a profit. So there's this balancing thing that needs to happen. We need to make sure that we have the security layers to be able to allow this trend, or allow us to benefit from this trends that are out there. We have spent a lot of money over the past years protecting our PCs and laptops, and there's a lot of layers, agents, etc. on those devices. But as we all probably know, because we all have multiple devices, smartphones and tablets, is those layers are not on there. And that's really what the traditional issue has been, that the security has not kept up with the growth with the bring your own devices. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Platform chaos, you know, the real winners are Android and Apple for smartphones and tablets. And, you know, we used to have one device, and now we have 2, 3, 4 devices. Most of us at least have a PC and a smartphone. Many of us also add tablets and other devices to that. So the number of devices out there is increasing. In fact, here's the numbers. It's about 500 million devices now connected to corporate networks, and most of these devices are also connecting to the web. So that's the real issue. You have employees or contractors that can get to your network, but they also can get to other places that could be very dangerous, like the web, going to Facebook, LinkedIn, etc., and picking up viruses and worms or malicious software that could compromise their PCs or their endpoints, their smartphones, but also could get access to your network and then spread things throughout. And that's, again, what the problem is. I think we're all aware of that. Over the next 4 years, that number is going to go to, estimated to go to about 15 billion with a B. So this craziness will continue over the years. You know, we in IT, we have our 3 or 4 devices, but a lot of folks are still just, you know, have their PC, maybe their iPhone, but we'll see over the next 4 years that people will want to take advantage of the applications that are out there that are productivity enhancements, as well as the social and personal opportunities that exist. And our customers tell us that the major concern is visibility. Because of all these devices accessing the network, they don't know what's on their network. They don't have the tools to be able to see who's accessing corporate network or not, and that's one of the biggest issues. So the three use cases that we're going to cover today, through a couple of slides, the marketing stuff, the three use cases that I want to focus on today are these. Number one, I mentioned the web as the number one threat vector. So I want to talk about how to protect these smartphone and tablet endpoints from the web. Secondly, just a general overall secure remote access. How can we provide that first line of defense? How do we encrypt traffic that leaves the smartphone and terminates somewhere else? And then lastly is, what about authentication and authorization? What if I want to be the traffic cop to determine who gets on my network and who doesn't? Can I control access to guests, contractors, etc.? So I'm going to go over a couple of best practices that, again, are available from Cisco today that addresses these three common access methods or use cases that our customers are telling us that are really problematic for them. So let me start with a solution from Cisco that will not break the bank, that many of you guys may already have most or all of the components to be able to do this, and it's called AnyConnect Secure Mobility. I want to walk you through the components of this solution, and as Kate mentioned, if you have questions, please, as I go through this, probably the best thing to do is enter them into the Q&A panel, and we'll try to get them answered throughout, or at least at the end of the presentation we'll save a few minutes and try to get your questions answered. I want to make sure that you guys get the information that you came for this morning. AnyConnect Secure Mobility is a combination of three components. Again, some that you may already have and could easily provide this first line of defense for smartphones and tablets. The first component is the same AnyConnect client that has existed and that Cisco has marketed for years for your PCs and your laptops is now available for the majority of smartphones and tablets that are out there. So, for example, if you have an Apple iPhone, you can go to the Apple App Store and download the free Cisco VPN client from the Apple App Store for your iPhone or your iPad, etc. And now you have the same AnyConnect VPN client that has been existing and you've been using for years. Most of you guys do use for remote access for laptops and PCs, now for your smartphones and tablets. Now, in order to turn on that free VPN client that's downloadable by Apple, you have to have the AnyConnect mobile license. I will cover that in a minute. It's a nominal one-time license that comes in conjunction with your ASA, your Cisco Adaptive Security Appliance, which is the second component of the AnyConnect Secure Mobility. If we had an open forum here, I would ask you guys how many of you have Cisco ASAs, and the vast majority of you would say that you do have a Cisco ASA that you're using for stateful firewall as your core firewall solution. Possibly you could be using that device for intrusion prevention or IPS because it has IPS capabilities integrated into it. And then the third functionality of the ASA is secure remote access, and that's where the AnyConnect VPN client comes. And again, most of you guys have been using the AnyConnect Essentials license, which covers your covers your PCs and laptops. And then the second license is the AnyConnect mobile license. I'll show it to you here in a minute, that covers your smartphones and your tablets. And with those two things, then now you have the ability to encrypt all traffic that leaves that device, that iPhone, that iPad, and terminates to the web or some other application. We now can scramble or encrypt that information by building that secure remote access tunnel, that VPN client tunnel for that traffic that terminates to your adaptive security appliance, your ASA firewall. Now, the third component is the IronPort Web Security Appliance, and this is optional, an optional component of AnyConnect Secure Mobility for customers that want to be able to do more granular web controls for users that have smartphones and tablets, to make sure that we can do some additional controls, such as maybe we want to say, let's allow Kate to be able to go to Facebook, but let's control what she's able to do on Facebook. For example, we allow her to Facebook, but let's not allow her to do chat services, because somebody could send her a link which she could click on and download some malicious software. Or let's not allow her to, or let's disallow her from being able to download files because she could get a file transfer that could be a malicious file. And so we have the ability, if you have an Ironport web security appliance, to take that traffic, which, again, follow me, originated on the VPN client with the AnyConnect mobile license, and then it terminates to our ASA, or our Cisco Adaptive Security Appliance, just like your AnyConnect VPN from your laptop and your PC does. But now we can take that traffic that just terminated to your ASA, and we can forward it if you have an Ironport web security appliance, so that you can do these granular application controls for websites and other port 80, port 443 traffic, to have granular controls so that you can start controlling what applications these users that have the ability to get to your network. And it's not just Facebook. We have support for the majority of the social networking websites and other Web 2.0 apps that you may be using in your network, to be able to decide, hey, do we want to allow access to this from this user, whether it's a guest, a contractor, or an employee, to this application? If the answer is yes, let's limit them, and let's don't allow them to do things that could be problematic, could open up new threats to our environment. So that's an overview of the three components for AnyConnect Secure Mobility. Let me kind of break down. Many of you may already have the ASA, so there's no cost there. There is a license that I talked about, and let me move over to that. Here is the Essentials license that most of you are probably already using for your laptops and your PCs. This license is based on the ASA that you have, whether it's a low-end ASA like a 5505 if you have a very small environment, all the way up to a larger ASA that could connect up to 5,000 or 10,000 users. This is a one-time charge, anywhere from $100 to a $400 charge to connect all your users. So again, you can see that this client will allow you to have that first line of defense to encrypt traffic that leaves, in this case, your PC or your laptop. But in the case of the smartphones and tablets, it would be this license, which is a mobile license that is very similar to the Essentials license for those devices. Again, $100 to $500, a one-time charge depending on the ASA that you have, to allow all of these users to build tunnels from these devices. So you would need, with the ASA, you would need both the Essentials and the mobile license. The Essentials license is the foundational license. The mobile license is the specific license for those mobile devices, such as the iPhones and the iPads, Android devices, etc. In fact, this slide here shows you what support we have for devices for AnyConnect Mobile, and you will see we have, as I've mentioned a few times already, we have complete support for Apple iOS 5 platforms such as iPads, iPhones, iTouches, etc. But let me speak to Android here for a minute. Android's a little different in that we have to go to, and other vendors have to go to each manufacturer separately. So it's a little bit of a process to get full support for Android manufacturers. We support Galaxy. We obviously support our own Cisco CS Android tablets, and you'll see a few others listed here. And we're working to get the ones that you don't see on this list supported. And again, we have to go manufacturer by manufacturer. You'll see over the next few quarters that we'll continue to add manufacturers so that we support the full line of Android devices that are out there. So I mentioned the ASA as the second component of the AnyConnect Secure Mobility solution that will help you secure these endpoints. Let me just mention, as we're talking about the Adaptive Security Appliance, let me mention that we recently announced a refresh of the ASAs. This doesn't really specifically address BYOD, but just in general for those of you that are using Cisco ASA, we do not have any plans to end of life the 5510s, 5520s, or 5540s, which we call our mid-range ASAs, but we have refreshed the platform to include the 5512, 5515, which is an upgrade from a 5510, or a 5525, and a 5545, which is an upgrade from the 5520 and the 5540. The reason why we've refreshed these platforms is we've added about 4 times the memory and about 3 to 4 times the processing or performance to these similar platforms that you might be using today. We continue to ask the ASA to do more and more things, and as we ask it to be not only a firewall but a VPN device, an IPS device, etc., we're finding that we need more memory to make sure that the performance is there on these platforms. We are introducing at the end of this year what we're calling next generation firewall capabilities, and that will only be available in the new platforms, which is the 5512 through the 5555, and we'll also have it on the high-end platform, which is the 5585. If any of you guys have a need for data center class firewall or a firewall that is processing multiple gigabits of throughput, etc., that platform will be able to do next generation firewall as well. And what we classify as next generation firewall is the ability to not do your firewall policy only by ports and protocols, but for those of you that would like to look into the applications and do user and application firewall. For example, we talked about the Ironport web security appliance's ability to say, hey, if Kate's going to Facebook, let's allow or disallow her to be able to access that application, and let's give her some granular application controls based on whether we want her there or not. This is what I'm talking about that's going to be available on the firewall, at the firewall level, to be able to look at policy and say, you know, this user can go to this place, this web application, etc., and then allow you to do those same granular application controls at the firewall level. We call this next generation firewall. There's some competitors that have been doing this for about a year, 2 years, Palo Alto and a couple of others, and you know, we were a little late to build this product. From a next generation firewall functionality, we wanted to make sure that it had all of the features that our customers wanted, and we believe we got it right. And when we announce this at the end of the year, these ASAs will be able to do that. So for those of you that want to do firewall not only by ports and protocols but by users, applications, etc., that's going to be available. So I just wanted to spend a minute on the new ASAs. If any of you guys are looking at either you're running out of memory on your existing mid-range ASA or you're looking at a new ASA, make sure you're looking at the new refreshed ASAs that will have all the feature functionality that I just discussed. Talked about the application controls, so I'm going to, in the ability to determine who goes where and what they do once they get there, so I'll move past these couple of slides. And this just gives you kind of a technical explanation for what I've discussed as the 3 components for AnyConnect Secure Mobility. This is about as technical as I get, but again, I think I mentioned this before. The traffic will leave the user, the device, whether it's a laptop or a smartphone or tablet device, and it will terminate from that VPN client, and it will encrypt and scramble that information, terminate to an adaptive security appliance, a Cisco ASA, and then you have the option to forwarding it to a web security appliance if you want those granular controls that I talked about. And then that's the ability to make sure that you have a good solution to secure these smartphones, these tablets that might not exist today. And let me cover one other best practice. I want to move on to something that we call the Identity Service Engine, or wireless access control, and I want to spend about 10 minutes on that, and then we'll have a very smooth transition from this wireless access control solution over to mobility and wireless, which Alejandro is going to talk about, and he also is going to talk a little bit about the Identity Services Engine. But from an overview perspective, I want to kind of give you guys an idea of why customers are implementing ICE, or Identity Services Engine, with Cisco as a way to address the bring your own device use cases. And it's pretty obvious that there are users out there that have these devices that can access your network. And a lot of our customers want to be able to control or be the traffic cop to determine who gets on their network or not, whether it's an employee, a guest, or a contractor. They want the ability to, if they're a guest, maybe they just want to send this user over to the internet. Let's just give him port 80 access. If it's a contractor or a full-time employee, they may need access to our crown jewels. They may need to get to the data center where a lot of our critical assets are, et cetera. So the ability to look at a user or a device and determine what access privileges or roles that we want them in is really important, and the Identity Services Engine does that. So let me kind of go through this slide and give you an overview of everything or some of the common features and functionalities that the Identity Service Engine or ICE platform makes available to you. First of all is a simple authentication and authorization. I want to allow the right users and devices on my network. So what happens here from a user experience is if they want to get onto your network, they enter their credentials. We have single sign-on for Windows, so let's say they're entering their user network ID and password. From them entering that information, we now can identify who that user is. We will know by those credentials if this user is a guest, a contractor, an employee, etc., and now we can apply the correct access privilege or role to that user. Again, if it's an employee, maybe we give them full access. If it's a guest or a contractor, maybe we just send them onto the internet. So basic authentication and authorization is one of the foundational offerings of the Cisco ICE platform. Some of you guys are doing that with our ACS or Access Control Server today. Some of you have an alternate solution for authentication. Some of you aren't doing detailed authentication and authorization and would like to start doing it because you have concerns with these devices, these bring your own devices that could be entering your network. Now this solution works not only for wireless around BYOD, but this solution also works for your wireless, your VPN users, etc. But for today's purpose, we're talking about wireless and mobility. The wireless access control is what you would use with ICE to be able to control or authenticate and authorize those users coming in on smartphones and tablets. But the ICE device doesn't stop there. It also, a couple of things that it also does that's really important is, number one, posture services. Posture services is the ability for us to scan the endpoints on the network and determine if that endpoint has the right level of security patches. It could be Microsoft hot patch updates. It could be antivirus patch levels that your security policy says this user is supposed to have at a minimum before they can access the network. So we have the ability to scan some of the registry files for endpoints that might be trying to access the network, and we can take a look at whether that endpoint has the necessary patches that they need to have. And if they do not, we have the ability to just quarantine that user off to a separate VLAN where the only place they can access is servers or opportunities for them to download the necessary patches so that that endpoint can get healthy before, the keyword being before, they're allowed on the network. So Posture Services takes a look at that endpoint. It communicates the information back to you, compares it to your security policy, and then allows you to make an access or denied decision based on who they are. Again, you could deny them, or you could quarantine them to a VLAN. You could, within a matter of seconds after the scan, you could point them to an internal server, whether it's a WSUS server that you might have on site, or a McAfee or Symantec antivirus server. You can force them to pull a patch before they're allowed on the network, and all this happens in real time and within a matter of seconds. Another service I want to mention at a high level is the profiling services. We have the ability to profile what let's call non-PC endpoints. When I say non-PC endpoints, I'm talking about printers. I'm talking about, it could be medical imaging devices in our healthcare vertical. It could be video surveillance systems, cameras. It could be smartphones and tablets, an iPhone or an iPad. So all of these non-Windows environments, these non-PC environments where our customers want these devices to participate in access control, we do that with profiling services so that we can give you a full view of visibility for all of the devices on your networks, and we can keep those devices accountable and allow you to apply access roles and privileges and policies based on those devices, so that you can see that the Identity Services Engine goes far beyond just authentication and authorization. We can, once we know who a user is by their credentials, we can do a myriad of things and a lot of flexibility for granular policy based on the different users, based on how detailed or how granular we want to get on our policy. We can do that with the Identity Services Engines. The improvement, so many of you guys may be aware of the NAC from the NAC 1.0 days. Network and Mission Control was brought to the market 5+ years ago, and it always solved that problem for authentication and authorization, but it came at a cost for a lot of customers back in the NAC 1.0 days. The cost, or the downside, was the complexity in which it took to install this solution. And I want to talk about how a lot of that complexity has been removed with the Identity Services Engine, which came out last summer. It's been out about a year now. And the benefit to our customers is that all of the functionality that I've talked about so far resides in one appliance. And that's what's different about the early NAC 1.0 days. When we were selling NAC 5+ years ago, we sold it, and it had to be sold in a handful of appliances. If you wanted to just do simple authentication and authorization, you could use either an ACS appliance or a NAC server. But if you wanted to do the profiling for these other non-PC endpoints, if you wanted to look for these BYOD devices or these cameras or printers, we had a separate appliance, which was our NAC Profiler appliance, that we would install into our customers' environments. If customers wanted to do guest services so that you could offer your customers or your contractors guest access when they come onto your premise, there was a third appliance, the NAC Guest Server, that customers would buy. And then we had to manage all of that with a separate NAC Manager appliance. So in many of our environments, there was a minimum of 3 or 4 appliances, sometimes 5 appliances, to get all of this feature functionality that we now can do with one appliance with the Identity Services Engine. So a lot more flexibility in licensing options that you have when you look at the Identity Services Engine. We have a base package, we have an advanced package, depending on if you want to do simple authentication and authorization or guest access, you could do that with a base license. But if you do want to use the Identity Services Engine for profiling in the BYOD environment, or if you want to do things like posture assessment, which I talked about, which is that scanning of that registry file to get that information, to get detailed information on antivirus and hot patch information reported back to you so that you can clean or make those endpoints healthy before they're allowed on the network. If you want to do that quarantine, that remediation, then we have an advanced license that's available with the Identity Service Engine, which is more expensive than the base license, but from a cost of ownership is much less expensive. It has a much lower cost of ownership compared to back in the days in which we had to deploy multiple appliances. So if you haven't looked at the access control solution from Cisco in a while, if you looked at it back in the NAC 1.0 days, I want to encourage you to look at it again. We have partners that can deploy this solution without the complexities, which brings down the deployment costs, as well as integrating it all into one appliance, which simplifies your deployment and again lowers your cost of ownership. So I just wanted to give you an overview of ICE, which can be used specifically for the BYOD environment, but also can be used in wired and VPN scenarios as well from those use case perspectives. Device management, MDM, if you've heard the term mobile device management, is definitely a key element. Some of the things that ICE does not do that a lot of our customers ask about is how do I actually secure and manage the device itself? And I want to make clear that where Cisco falls into the mobile or the BYOD use case is really from the transmission and the connection perspective. We want to secure traffic that leaves an iPhone or leaves a device all the way until it terminates to where it's trying to go. And the in-between, or the VPN encryption point, and where it's traversing across the network from A to Z, we secure that for you. The actual device management itself, we recommend that you work with a mobile device management or MDM vendor to be able to do that if you want to really lock down that device and manage the security of that device itself. And we work with companies like Mobile Iron, AirWatch, etc. And we have integration into the Identity Services Engine, which will smoothen that integration of that MDM vendor. Many of our customers with the Identity Services Engine, they get enough of the layers of controls that they're looking for. If you want to go that extra layer with a mobile device management company, we can help you with one of our partners to integrate that device management solution. So with an MDM recommendation of a mobile device management solution, we can really be that end-to-end provider for you, tying in all the pieces. The two best practices that I shared with you today is really how to leverage your ASA with the mobile licenses that can be put directly on those devices that will give you that first line of defense, that VPN tunnel or that encryption point to scramble all the information that leaves that device. And then the second solution was the Identity Services Engine. If you guys want to be the traffic cop to control who gets access and who doesn't, I would recommend looking at that solution. Today I just wanted to provide an overview. We obviously don't have time to go into deep dives on these solutions. I just wanted to give you enough information to see if you had interest. We're available. Kate is available to schedule follow-up meetings where we can come in and take a deep dive, look at your specific situation, and get more technical, whiteboard a possible deployment for some of these solutions that I talked about today. And we're willing and available and would love to do that. But with that, I am going to, and I will be able to answer some, if you have any questions from what I've presented so far, feel free to put them in the Q&A panel. I'll be able to now look at that during Alejandro's presentation of mobility and wireless and can answer those questions for you. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Alejandro.
Typically, I assume that you're here because you have a vision for migration into higher level of wireless and security in your networks. And typically, this is being driven by a vision of supporting new applications, voice telemetry, location tracking, for example, possibly using imaging and video, secure collaboration. Collaboration is becoming very important in today's different industries, different verticals. The inundation of tablets and smartphones, Wi-Fi enabled devices that allow you to be more productive but also be connected with family and friends at all times is driving many of the bring your own device trends that we see. I'm sure that you're seeing that in your specific companies. Many devices are being used by one single user. Also, one-on-one initiatives like school districts or different cities and municipalities are experiencing as well to equip kids with one computer, with one tablet, and this is becoming a bottleneck. School districts are needing to rely on those devices that the kids are bringing to schools in order to complete homework or complete assignments. Video surveillance is also a big opportunity that we see in many of these different industries. So the vision typically goes accompanied with a huge challenge, or sometimes it can reach the status of a nightmare, because this implies for the people that will be implementing these these new technologies in the network, basically concerns about security, bandwidth, the connectivity, the backhaul as well, training for the staff as well, and storage requirements. Now, we have solutions for this. Of course, you have seen from Jimmy the statistical information about the expected penetration, not only of what we are living today in terms of these devices, but upcoming new devices with new technology, bandwidth-hungry type of applications. And essentially, at the end of the day, what you want is to, once these people, both employees, students, or guests, contractors visiting your facilities, when they approach you to ask, can I use my device in your network, the answer more and more is going to have to be yes, right? And you want this type of connectivity to be enabled in a very secure environment. Now, we have learned from Jimmy several of the layer 3 and above type of security technology that Cisco has developed for you. I'd like to spend some time in the layer 1, which is the radio layer, and the layer 2, the medium access layer as well, that will help you protect your network even more, right? We have learned from speaking with different customers and by applying surveys to them that the client devices are the #1 contributor for wireless network issues, right? The amount of these devices, the inability sometimes to troubleshoot quickly, is basically the main source of challenges for the IT managers, right? The second source is going to be interference, because typically in these environments where you have many tablets and many neighboring wireless networks, what you don't have is that visibility to understand what is happening in your radio environment. And of course, interference becomes a very critical problem when you're trying to make sure that your network is running smoothly, and essentially that limits your ability to provide Wi-Fi service 99.99% of the time, which is what you expect. Our solution includes embedded in the architecture. You don't need to pay any additional licenses, security, and visibility of this phenomenon, right? The architecture continues to be very straightforward: an access point, a controller, and the network management system, right? And we, of course, have at the top of this architecture different technologies that will make you do a better use of your radio resources, because as you know, the spectrum for Wi-Fi is basically public. Anyone could use it. So you want to make sure that you reduce the amount of interference, and also that you maximize the use of that limited spectrum. We also have additional platforms that I'm going to be happy to discuss in detail with you in a follow-up. The mobility services engine, which will allow you to do location tracking, that you will be able to visualize in a map that is important to the management platform, and be able to track multiple clients. You can do this on a client basis, one client at a time, without the MSC. But if you want full visibility of every one of your clients, you will need the MSC. There's also another platform that Jimmy presented in detail, which is the identity services engine, that will provide profiling and posture assessment, which is very critical if you want to completely have a controlled access policy enforced of every one of your devices in the facility. Now, one of the most important technology innovations that we came up to the market in the last couple of years is basically CleanAir. CleanAir is a chipset that is embedded in some of our access points, right? The highest end access points will include this chipset, which essentially is a spectrum analyzer that will allow you to detect and classify the type of technology, the type of interference sources that you may be experiencing in your network. If we're talking about a two-way radio or a cordless phone or a Bluetooth device, a microwave oven, it doesn't matter, because we have the ability to measure and determine and classify the type of device based on the transmit signature that this device is radiating to the air, right? And we're going to be able to tell you exactly what type of device this is, right? If we do a quick illustration of how this works, let's assume that we have this very basic frequency plan for a certain facility, and all of a sudden somebody decides to install a Wi-Fi camera in the area, which basically will render the access point using channel number 6 useless because of the interference level, right? The access point is going to report, is going to measure this energy, this interference, and is going to report this information back to the controller. The controller is going to be making measurements to make an educated compromise on the frequency to move this access point to, right? In a way to work around that source of interference. In the illustration, the decision was to move it to channel 11, right? And then continue to provide service. Of course, there was a compromise made because there might be some interference here, but at least it's not going to be to the level that the Wi-Fi camera was causing and denying service to the rest of the client. This is a very powerful technology because it's going to work proactively, right? You're not going to need to have manual intervention, and this will allow you to restore service automatically, and then you will definitely be informed via email or via a text message as you decide to do it, right? Again, a very important innovation that will allow you to, based on the transmit signature of the offender, of the interferer, you will be able to determine what type of device it is and whether we are talking about one or two or more interfering devices acting up and working in detriment of the performance of your network. Now, the competition does not have this embedded chipset. They will not be able to differentiate whether you are talking about one or more interfering devices. They don't have the resolution, and this is a significant advantage for you to understand your radio environment and also to be able to enforce specific policy, like for example, do not bring to my facilities an Xbox remote control or a PS3 remote control or any of those devices like a Wi-Fi camera or a two-way radio, etc. Now, the network control system, the management software, is going to be able to import a map of your facilities, and you are going to have a visual representation of the offenders, where they are located, and also the area of impact in which the interference is acting up. In this map, you're also going to be able to see clients moving around, and you're also going to be able to see security threats, right, simultaneously. So the management platform is very powerful for you to have complete visibility into your radio environment in every one of your buildings or facilities on a per floor basis. There's going to be another very important innovation that we call client link, and that is the ability to, as opposed to radiate in all possible directions in an omnidirectional environment, right? You will be able to point the energy of a specific station towards the location of your client in a way that the rest of the clients are not going to be hearing what for them is going to be noise, right? But specifically, you're going to emphasize the levels of energy in the direction of the correct client. This really translates into a higher throughput if you have client link enabled, and of course, you're going to have the opportunity to assign this higher throughput, this cleaner bandwidth to your clients. You're going to finish your sessions quicker, and you're going to be able to reallocate those radio resources to another client that need it, right? And again, this is a type of beamforming that will emphasize the energy of one session going to a specific client in the direction of that client, right? So others do not perceive that session because for them it's going to be noise. This has immediate impact in the noise levels that you can measure in your different facilities, and this will again make a very effective use of your radio resources. I'd like to point out that the way we build our access points is in a way that we provide them with sufficient processing capabilities and sufficient memory, right, in order to not only support every one of the 11N requirements, but also support our differentiators, right? And it is known, we have made measurements and we have seen this in real environments with customers that have moved from competitors into Cisco equipment, that many of our competitors cannot sustain the throughputs that they claim as maximum throughputs when they enable encryption, for example, right? They fall back down to a third of the maximum claims. So processing power, the way we build and architect our access points and the control is very important for you to count on the fact that you will be providing your wireless data service, as well as simultaneously be monitoring for security threats and for interference, which is very important when you're trying to build a network that is completely reliable. Not only in that sense, but also in the way we manufacture the enclosures, the antenna connectors, the antenna cables, the circuitry. For example, if you see our products will be a sealed unit as opposed to requiring vents to cool down the circuitry inside the access point. So this is going to make for a very durable design, and I just want to bring that out to your attention because this is very important. In the portfolio, we have different choices for access points, and once we have a conversation with you, we can determine the best recommendation specific to your needs. We have access points that feature enterprise grade 11N, and then as you move up in the ladder, you will find more features and functionalities that will make better use of your spectrum, right? The top of the line access point is the 3600. The 3600 access point will feature a 4x4 unique antenna design in the industry. Nobody else has a 4x4 today. And this, coupled with the 3 spatial streams client link, which is the beamforming functionality that I explained to you a minute ago, it is going to provide with the top of the line use of your spectrum, right? You will be able to accommodate higher client count, faster throughputs for every one of your stations, and it also features a modular architecture, so that when we have future Wi-Fi standards available enterprise grade, we're going to be able to upgrade this access point to support those future standards as well. This is the top of the line, and we can discuss whether this access point is right for you, or if we can afford moving back down in the ladder of different products that we have. The 3600, basically, because of all these improvements in radio spectrum efficiency, you're going to be able to maximize the area in which you can actually provide higher throughput, right? And that's the resulting benefit of having all these technologies coupled in one single product. We also have an access point that is portable. Basically, you can take it to your home. If you are a home-based employee or an executive or a road warrior, basically a salesperson that spends a lot of time on hotels or customer facilities, you will be able to create a portable Wi-Fi network, and you will be able to feature different security mechanisms just the way your headquarters office will feature, right? This access point is going to establish a secure tunnel to go back to your headquarters, basically enjoying the same level of security features. And if you have it at home, In addition to the corporate SSID, you will also be able to provide your family with 3 additional SSIDs for personal or family use. We also have an outdoor mesh 11N family. These products are designed precisely to withstand difficult weather conditions. They are ruggedized, and essentially they will feature client link and also CleanAir. They have a 3-year hardware warranty, which is very powerful in the industry. And you know, for reliability and failover of mesh products, you see that mesh is going to, in the event of a failure, right, the paths between the mesh access points are going to be recalculated, and you will be able to find alternative paths to go back out to the internet and to the switched network. So this is applicable not only for our outdoor access points, but also you can configure your indoor access points to function in a mesh type of architecture, and you will be able to control both an outdoor mesh and an indoor mesh from the same controller. And again, this is very powerful because it will allow you further flexibility in the event that you cannot run an Ethernet cable to provide backhaul to an indoor access point. Again, very flexible type of functionality. We have a very complete antenna portfolio, a lot of omnidirectional directional antennas as well, and we have a high density type of antenna as well for stadiums and entertainment venues, churches as well, or areas for congregation, right? If many of the school districts manage also stadiums, and this probably is going to be a good solution if you have to cover those areas. The controllers that we feature, basically the need of having a controller is because the controller is a central brain with a very panoramic view of the different neighboring relationships between every one of the access points. So the controller is going to be able to make decisions, immediate decisions, proactive decisions on whether one access point needs to be, because it may have failed or it may have been obstructed by construction, etc. The controller is going to be able to either increase power of the neighboring access points, change the channel of a specific access point, etc. It's a central brain that will feature radio resource management in a very proactive fashion as well. Very important when you want to do self-calibration, self-healing, self-optimization type of maintenance tasks. And another feature in our controller portfolio is the fact that if you want to start small and leave growth for a later phase, you can definitely start with a small number of access point licenses and then add license adders as you grow. In other words, you pay as you grow, right? You do not have to invest in all the number of licenses up front, but only the ones that you're going to be using, right? And you can definitely leave room for growth, for immediate growth if you need to. We have 3 different sizes of controllers, but again, every one of our controllers will feature pay as you grow. This is unique in our industry and gives you tremendous flexibility in terms of a capital investment, right? We also have these controllers in their blade versions, right? Again, featuring pay as you grow. We can discuss more on a one-to-one basis. Let me do a check in time very quickly. Kate, are we doing well? Can I use another 5 minutes?
Yeah, you have 5 more minutes. Let's, you finish your presentation, and we'll answer some questions, and that'll be it.
Very good, very good. Flex Connect is basically the ability to put the controller in the cloud and essentially manage remote branches from a headquarters perspective or from somewhere in the cloud, right? This functionality is present in every one of the controllers that I mentioned to you. And essentially, if you have a remote branch, you can install access points in this remote branch, and they are going to be establishing a DTLS secure tunnel back to the controller in the cloud, right? The controller could be in the headquarters office or somewhere else. And of course, this is something that characterizes our products, the ability to scale. You can install this type of arrangement anywhere in the world, basically, not only limited to a national deployment, right? And our ability to scale, of course, will depend on the type of controller that you end up selecting, right? If you have a national type of deployment, we're going to recommend to go with the biggest controller, and we can calculate your requirements based on the number of branches that you're expecting to deploy. Guest network access is also included. You do not need separate licenses, and it's pretty flexible. You will be able to have, let's say, a person at the reception manage this service, because it's very simple to use, and you're going to have enough granularity to classify the type of guest users that you're going to be allowing service. In terms of security, as I mentioned before, for layer 1 and layer 2 attacks, we're going to be able to detect ad hoc wireless networks that can be created, rogue access points. You will be able to identify a friendly rogue access point that may be neighboring, like a Starbucks or a Barnes & Noble type of network that may be next to your building. You will be able to say, hey, this is a friendly rogue access point, right? And if you at some point in time sense a change in the typical receive signal strength from these friendly rogue access points, you will be notified, because maybe somebody is trying to impersonate these neighbor access points, and they are going to be prevented from collecting your clients. Denial of service, honeypots, and reconnaissance, all these different threats, we're going to be able to prevent them and report to you. The advantage that we have is that our access points feature something that we call enhanced local mode. They, in addition to provide data service, will be providing also the monitoring of the airwaves, searching for security threats. You do not need an overlay of access points in order to make these two functionalities be present in your net. So no more security access point overlay. You can do this from the single access point. This will help you comply with PCI security standard, and we in the management platform, the NCS, we're going to be able to provide you with reports of your status of security in order to comply with PCI. So again, very powerful type of mechanism here for you to keep compliance at all times. The management software, in fact, will provide you with visibility to wireless and also switching. You will be able to monitor and troubleshoot not only your wireless, but also your switches. If you have any catalyst switches, you do not need any other type of management software in order to have visibility to your entire network. You will be able to see your wireless, your switching. You will be able to detect interference. If you are planning to implement a new voice over Wi-Fi network, you have tools to estimate the coverage and the limitations of your current coverage in order to increase the density, if needed, of your access points count. Location of rogue access points, as I mentioned to you, you're going to be able to see it in the map, and PCI compliance, you're going to have a security dashboard to, at all times, assess the security and health of your wireless network. It's very, very detailed. You will be able to go from a high-level view and drill down into the detailed data. Now, I'm using this slide as a reminder that you will have an opportunity if you have any Cisco older access points or controllers. If you have any competitors' access points or controller, you will be able to trade them in. And this is what we call the technology migration program. It gives you the ability to trade in your older Wi-Fi equipment and obtaining a credit towards purchase of new equipment. So please use this slide as a way to remember that. It's amazing what you find when you monitor your kids' Facebook, and that's where I found that's where I found this picture. In summary, basically our wireless advantages, we have a solid foundation for a hardware platform, right? The processing, the memory, the security is integrated. We have specific type of AP solutions for you, and more importantly, we are IPv6 ready. So when you are in a position to do your migration, our wireless gear is going to be able to support that migration to IPv6. We have very powerful, cost-effective differentiators like CleanAir, Client Link, and many others that I did not have the opportunity to present here. But pay as you grow is also another very important differentiator for you to consider. NCS is a very complete, valuable tool for management, wireless, and also switching. Security is going to be visible to you. You're going to see interference, guest access, and also planning tools for voice and other applications. We work very closely with iTech. We support iTech, and we are going to have, you're going to have great post-sale support as well. We have understanding of a broad number of deployment scenarios, whether we're talking about a specific city or a school district, whether it's enterprise manufacturing versus warehousing, any type of industry, medical as well, we're going to be able to support. We do a lot of schools, and we are very good at that. And the last point is that our financials are pretty solid. We are not going to be disappearing tomorrow. We have the trading program that I'd like you to remember, and we focus very much on supporting our partners, like in this case, iTech. And with that, I think that's pretty much it. I appreciate your time.